1306, applicant Vincent Tai, rezoning 13167.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item was continued from the October 30th Planning Commission hearing. The commission at that time requested that the applicant meet with his surrounding community to resolve some of the issues that they were concerned with, and then report back to the commissioners. So, if it's all right with the commissioners, I'd like to just give another brief overview since it's been quite a few months since that hearing. Good? Okay. All right. The subject property is located in the South Hilo district in downtown Hilo. You can see Kapiolani Street on the right side of the slide. The police station is in this area that I'm pointing to now. Hualalai Street runs Mackay towards downtown in this location. And then Hualalai Street extends to provide access to the subject property, which is shown in a black outline and a dark purple color. The dark purple color indicates the current zoning, which is multiple family residential with a density of 2,500 square feet per lot or per area that they can build. The requested zoning is RM 1.5, so the applicant's requesting a higher density. And you can see the property to the north, it's in brown, is currently zoned RM 1.5, which is similar to what the applicant's requesting. Surrounding properties to the south and the west are zoned single-family residential, 7,500 square feet. That's shown in the yellow color on the map. The general plan designation for the property is medium density urban. Medium density urban allows for single-family residential as well as multiple family residential and also community and commercial uses. So the request is consistent with the general plan designation. The applicant's requesting a change of zone from multiple family residential 2,500 square feet to multiple family residential 1,500 square feet. He's requesting the zoning in order to develop an affordable housing project known as Hualalai Court, and that will consist of 88 affordable housing units. This is the site plan that the applicant submitted when he originally requested this zoning back in October. And the site plan has been changed after meeting with the community members. So I just want to fast forward over this one and show you the current proposal. So you can see a driveway access off of Hualalai Street. Halinani Street turns to the south in this area here and then loops around to the residents of the Halinani neighborhood to the south. You can see the parking area for each of the units, and then the buildings are oriented mainly along the property lines off of the parking areas. So the difference between the previous plan and the current plan is you'll notice one of the things that the neighbors requested was an additional setback, additional building setback. The zoning code requires a 10-foot setback, and so that's reflected here in this plan. And you can see in the current proposal, the applicant has set back at least 20 feet from the property lines. He's also proposing to keep some of the existing vegetation on the site, and that's shown with these circles. Those are existing trees or shrubs that he is planning to keep on the property and not remove, so that it will serve as a buffer between the neighbors along Halinani and the proposed development. This is an aerial view of the property. Again, you have Hualalai Street, providing access to the property. This is Halinani Street. And these are the residences along Halinani Street. There's currently a single-family dwelling and pool on the property, which will be demolished if the zoning is approved. And this aerial photo was from Google. It was from January of last year, and I think it's pretty representative of the vegetation that's currently on the property. You can see the big trees and some shrubs. This is a view of the end of Hualalai Street. So the subject property is far back in this area. You can see one of the concerns that's been brought up by the neighbors is an increase in traffic. You can also see there's this big wall here at the corner of Hualalai Street and Halinani, and that kind of limits the sight distance. This is a very old wall that's been there for many years. And then this is another view of that wall. This is Halinani Street, and it curves around to Hualalai Street. So the subject property is located off of the slide on the left side. The planning director is still recommending that a favorable recommendation be forwarded to the county council for this rezone request, because the request is consistent with the general plan designation for the area, which calls for more housing and commercial uses in downtown Hilo. There are several letters that you should have received in your package this morning, and I just want to go through them. You should have a letter from Charlene Nishida, dated February 4th. You should have an email from David Martin, dated February 5th. A letter from Ann Toma, dated January 26th. And I think you have 4 letters from Mr. Ty, dated November 4th, November 20th, December 11th, 5 letters, December 29th, and January 30th. I think the December 29th letter and the January 30th letters were written after Mr. Ty held the community meeting, so they're probably the more current letters and most representative of the outcome of the community meeting. You should also have an email that Mr. Ty had sent to me dated December 31st. And that email just generally goes over points of agreement between Mr. Ty and the community, and suggests conditions that the Planning Commission will want to consider. And lastly, you should have a piece of paper with 5 photos on it, and I'm not certain who submitted this. Maybe one of the testifiers can let us know. Are there any questions?
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioners, any questions for staff?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I also want to add that we do have a representative here from the Department of Public Works that can answer any questions related to flooding or traffic if the commission has them.
Commissioner, I know we just got this info this morning, so I'll give you a couple minutes to take a look at these letters. And you'll proceed. I'd like to call up the applicant, Mr. Tai, to come up. Good morning, Mr. Tai.
Good morning.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear and affirm to tell the truth before the Windward Planning Commission over this matter?
Yes, I do.
Thank you so much. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Vincent Tai. The address is 2184 Roundup Drive in Honolulu.
Thank you. You may proceed.
First, let me express my appreciation for allowing the continuance from the last time. As I explained, I've been in business for a long time. I misunderstood. I thought that there would be another public meeting, hearing for the planning project approval. So I thought this resulted in only the first public hearing, and there will be a second one that we deal with design, which I didn't understand that. And obviously, I wanted to meet with the neighbors. That's just that I didn't understand that there won't be another public meeting for them to speak up. I just got the 2 letters from Meyer dated before yesterday. So I told Meyer that I would respond here in person instead of writing, because it's sending the letters already. So let me just first respond to Mrs. Thoma's letter, real brief here. And she mentioned that I had 2 previous meetings planned and both canceled on short notice for the meeting. Right? Actually, there's only one that was planned, and I was not the one who canceled it. Let me explain. I wrote to 62 owners within 300 feet and tried to set a meeting on November 14th. I even bought plane tickets to come over here. And just a few days before November 14th, I got a phone call from Meyer, and I understand that Mrs. Nishida insisted that I should cancel that. She asked for, I gave them 10 days notice, and I was told it's not enough, it should be 30 days notice. And also, she insisted that I should hire a facilitator. So because of that, the November 14th was canceled, and I canceled my plane ticket as well. So I sent another 62 letters for the second meeting, which was December 18th. Right? Again, luckily that one did not get canceled. Okay? I was glad that a good number of attendees were at that meeting, and I really appreciate their attendance. And I'll go over that later. Now, Mrs. Tom also raised other questions like, who should I call if someone can't move with friends, if someone parked in front of my property. Those I really cannot answer those questions, but I did in my statement that obviously as a project sponsor, I have to work with the traffic department, public works department, and resolve any issues that you deal with that. I can be responsible, but there are things outside the properties that it's a city, traffic. Obviously there will be a slight increase in traffic. In fact, according to TIER, the traffic report, the impact was just almost negligible. They say less than 1 second of delay. Be that as it may, I'm not going to go into that because it was done by something else. And then Mrs. Nishida's letter is a little bit more. I should address that now. I believe I comply with just about everything that Mrs. Nishida asked for. She was the only one to ask for the delay of the hearing for 30 days notice. She asked for a facilitator I complied with. But there are a few things that I did not agree with her. Number one, she said this location, this property is not in an urban area, which I disagree. Okay? In fact, even according to the city documents, the whole city, the town of Hilo, including this property, is considered an urban area. Now, I think that's a big a difference in interpretation that may affect her thinking. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay? And also, she is a licensed appraiser, and she claimed that having workforce affordable housing nearby and a two-story building next door would depress the property value, which I disagree because I have supported. I've gone through many of these sources from authorities saying that that is not the case. Okay? And I can detail that a little bit more. The fact, and also, I think the point is maybe urban appraisal is not Mrs. Nishida's area of expertise, which is perfectly fine. Like, even for doctors, you don't go to a gynecologist, you want to have a heart transplant, right? I'm a licensed architect. You come to me, if you want me to design a hotel, a hospital, I will know what to do. I'm a licensed architect, but we all have expertise. So I'm not trying to say or trying to diminish Mrs. Nishida's qualification. All I'm saying is maybe her expertise is not in the early setting. That's what I'm trying to say. Because she pointed out that I have not agreed with the buffer zone. First of all, I checked with Maya, and she confirmed that for residential zone areas, properties, there is no buffer zone required. The sections she stated apply for industrial properties, which I don't think is appropriate because we are really dealing with residential here. So it's not appropriate for me to comply with an industrial zone buffer zone. But I'll leave it up to the planning director. The planning director said, well, you still have to do it, then I'll do it. Okay, but I don't think it is appropriate because it is not industrial here. And we talk about these native plants and these things over a while. There are all kinds of trees out there in the city. Okay, but this has nothing to do with the rezoning. If the problem exists now, it needs to be resolved. In fact, about 3 months ago, I told Mrs. Nishida I would get a Martha associate, who was a surveying engineer, to identify the property line one more time, make sure the stakes are there. And I even sent that latest drawing to Mrs. Nishida. I said, I need that so that I can run the line to find out exactly where the property line is. Because some trees could be in the neighbor's properties, some trees could be in my property. You can't see, there's all trees out there, okay? Now, of course, if they are non-native, they are invasive species, they need to be removed eventually. Whether I get the rezoning or not, nothing to do with rezoning, okay? There are trees that are very nice. There are mango trees, there are other good-looking trees. They should be kept. You know, nobody wants to cut healthy trees. So again, she raised the question here that I said I didn't do it. No, that's not the case. In fact, I told her that after we got through all these, we'll walk the property. We make sure we run a straight stream, show exactly where the property line is. Then we deal with this so-called invasive species, the roots that go into the neighbor's property. What happens all the time, even in my house in Hong Kong. Okay? So that needs to be dealt with, but it's nothing to do with the rezoning, because that needs to be done no matter what. Okay? And also, she pointed out about flooding that I didn't respond. Now, perhaps she didn't quite understand what I told her or written in the letters. The proposed stream is outside of my property. So, in fact, it runs through my neighbor's property. Now, if this water did come into my property and create flooding, so on, I need to deal with it either now or in the future. Nothing to do with the rezoning. In fact, the rezoning in the background statement, I stated certain method that I will use to get rid of water that's coming into the site. So that all the water, the storm drainage will be all done on-site, and none of the water will be flowed outside. But if outside water coming in, something that we need to resolve. And Mr. Tim Wright is very kind. In fact, every time something happens, he will send me pictures because I don't live there, but I really appreciate his help. And I told Tim that we, together, him and me, would approach non-public work and really sort out the issues, the problems, because the problem is really outside of my property, down, he told me it's underneath a proposed street, and also to my neighbor's property, and then somehow it gets into my property. So again, it has nothing to do with this rezoning. It needs to be done, it needs to be resolved. In fact, if the project is developed, there's already certain methods to deal with groundwater and how to get rid of it. Now, I know Mrs. Nishida complained that I did not have a landscaping plan. I also checked with Maya, and she confirmed that in the rezoning plan, you don't require a landscape plan. When you come to the building design, when you request for approval, then you do need a landscaping plan. Now, I don't think Mr. Nishida didn't understand it because it's just a layman. In my profession, landscaping plan is not a separate issue. It's really integral part of the overall project design. You have to understand what kind of building is going to be there, what it looks like, where the parking area is, how to create berms or any visual blockage. And you plan the landscaping around the structures. And also that would be the time to survey which are the trees that need to be cut down, removed, and rebuilt. Replant. So I see that this is a project. The landscaping itself is not a separate issue. It really cannot be done at this point because the design is only conceptual. And once you have exactly where the buildings are, their height, where the windows are, then you do the landscape design. This is the correct way to do it. And also, in terms of timing, I did agree 100% with Mrs. Nishida that I would walk the space with her once the construction is just about finished and then we start to do landscaping. We would survey what are the existing trees in back of her property that need to be kept or need to be removed. And I agreed that I would grow areca palms, as she suggested, to fill the gaps. I already agreed to that, but not today. It's too early to do that because we don't know exactly where these things are. And then after the building is completed, just before we do landscaping, that will be the time to do it. I already agreed to it in writing. Although I still question, what 100% because these are plans and can control them. Okay? In fact, one attendee, I think her name is Doreen Pfeiffer, she disagreed with Mrs. Nishida that there should be 100% blockage. She said she didn't want that, So it's not fair for Mrs. Nishida to speak for everybody else because they all have different ideas. But I did promise Mrs. Nishida I would do that for her. But anyone who think that they need something more than what is there now, and I always do make the statement that I would be glad to meet with each of them if they come to me. But I won't impose that condition on these people because, like I said, at least one person objected to that idea. Okay. Like I said the last time, if this project, if this location has not been under the current general plan and is primed for developing housing and affordable housing is needed, I really want to do the project. Okay, I don't want to force anything to certain reasons. Now, this project under the RM 1.1, 1.5, when you compare to the project that previously approved under 2.5. And I have a table to show, compare the two projects. This project under RM 1.5, I intend to do affordable housing for the entire project, not just 20% or 25% to satisfy the entire project. It's anywhere between 60 to 100% AMI. Now, I was told, if I'm correct, for the last 30 years, no such project had ever built in Hilo. Maybe a small amount built in the common side, I'm not sure. You see projects that are low income, which is between 0 to 50%, mostly 30 to 50%, but there's none of 60 to 100%. From my research in the state of Hawaii, between 60 to 100% is the most needed. It's a big gap that people are not doing. Either they do very low income, or they want to go 140%, which is actually higher than the most affordability. Okay, but it's still so-called still affordable. That's why people do that, so they can satisfy the 20%, right? And there's a big gap for the 60 to 100%. These are the people who needed the housing most. They are the ones who cannot afford market rate, but they're not qualified for the low income. These are people that maybe your friends are students, city workers, firemen, policemen, working families. This is a big gap. Okay? Now, I own 5 or 6 properties in Hilo alone the last few years. I have 2 properties, old 40 to 30 years, common, supposed to be nice. Show right here. Okay? I have no problem renting 1 bedroom. Of course, inexpensive, $1,100. I have no vacancy whatsoever because a lot of people after this kind of housing, $1,000 plus or minus, and the students, half of those students, half, maybe more than less than half, are nurses to come in for 6 months. Okay? They told me that it's not easy to find this kind of housing. They cannot afford $2,000 to $3,000, and they're not qualified for it. Right? So I believe what I'm doing here is haven't been done in Hilo at all. Even in the common side, very limited. Even in Ohio, very limited. Okay? So again, I follow every rule, everything according to the book. And if so-called workforce housing is needed in Hilo, this is one opportunity here. Now, I went to see, I went to meet with the Honolulu office of the Hawaii Housing Finance and Development Corporation. They are the one who hand out the low-income housing tax credits. I met with Darren here. He's a finance manager. He spent more than half an hour with me. First, I asked him why he didn't want to talk to me. Now, he said 2 things. You may or may not know. Okay? First, he said, oh, good. This is from Hilo. And someone is willing to offer a piece of property. He said there's a lack of property that we do a substantial project in Hilo, number 1. Number 2, he said, financially, it's very difficult to do it. The cost of construction is so high. He said you have to watch the construction. You make sure, because otherwise you won't make it. I think I can make it. Okay? And he told me that if I can do it, I might have a good chance in winning one of the competitions for the low-income housing credit for 9%. It's highly competitive. If I apply in June, before June next year, he said I might have a good shot just because there's nothing happening. But of course, he cannot say that encouragingly. Okay. Again, he's also stressed that 60 to 100% is really a big gap. Very few people are doing that. So I think in sincerity, I believe I met with almost all the reasonable requests that my neighbors raised. those are even beyond what the code requires. There are some issues that I cannot deal with. There are questions I cannot answer, but I do know from reading newspapers and going online that affordable housing between 60 and 100% AMI is badly needed in the whole state, and particularly Hilo. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Tai. Questions, commissioners? Thank you. We have public testimony. This is Nikita, Charlene, Alan Rudo, David Martin, Roy Toma, Trish Kishan. Swear and affirm to tell the truth before the Windward Planning Commission over this matter. Thank you so much. Let's start with Charlene.
My name is Charlene Nishida, and I reside at 16 Hualalai Drive in Hilo. I need to start off by saying Mr. Tai has, on several occasions, in written and in testimony, has absolutely made false statements that I've said. And I need to be very clear that these are inaccurate. And the two things that he quoted today, I have never said. And I need to be very clear about that Mr. Tai has this ability to take things that people say and twist them into things they have not said. I did not say anything that stating that Hilo was not, in our neighborhood was not in an urban area. I did not state that I was opposed to workforce housing developments that would have, and that they would have a negative effect on our property values. I have never said that, and I need to be clear that letters that he sent out, that he's quoting me as saying things, I have not said, and I need to be on record as saying that to you. And moving forward, there's a couple of things that I want to point out, and I think that first and foremost, as neighbors, we are not opposed to an affordable housing development at all. That has never been the majority of the neighbors that I've been speaking to. There's never been an opposition to that. What the opposition is to the changing of the zone that would increase the density in our backyards, in our neighborhood. If Mr. Tai would pursue an affordable housing development at its current density, I don't think anyone would object. So we need to be very clear that this is not about an affordable housing development. This is about increasing the density and the issues that come up as a result of that. Mr. Tai cites in his different letters, he keeps making references that the studies that he's showing and the research that he's stating that show no impact on property values when a development is well designed and managed similar to neighboring houses. Well, this change of zoning, he's not comparing apples to apples. If it was, these studies are all of affordable housing developments where they're residential and the neighborhood is residential. What he's proposing is an affordable housing development that's of apartment buildings. So you can't use that research and apply it to this situation. He needs to be taking research that shows how property values are affected when you are in a residential single-family situation and then you become surrounded by apartment buildings. That's the research that he needs to be providing, and that he hasn't. I will say that as an appraiser, when I'm appraising a property, I am required to report if the property that I'm appraising as a residential appraiser, if there's a parking lot adjacent to it, whether it's an apartment building or a commercial complex, it's something that has to be disclosed. And you have to use comparable residential properties that have that similar attribute. If you can't find them, then you have to disclose that information and you have to make negative adjustments in your determination of market value for that property. So I don't see how Mr. Tai can say that these are not going to, that having an apartment building that is visible is going to be something that is not going to negatively affect our property values. I think if you talk to any residential appraiser, they will tell you we are required to disclose that, and we are required to provide comparables that have that similar attribute. And it's not common. It's not something that's common. If any of you have recently had your houses appraised, I think you would find that the comparables that are used in your homes are, you don't have parking lots of comparables that were used in your reports. One of the things that I provided to you was this picture that actually shows the top 2 photos are from our backyard staring into Mr. Tai's development. The middle photo is from the front of our yard, and then the 2 bottom photos are just samples of houses in the area. What we have requested from Mr. Tai in a community meeting that was held here and was in this whole room was full. Every seat was taken. It was a very well attended